Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, or much depending on your location. Please join in the struggle to liberate our people from the contraption. Like and share videos. Today is Monday, the 9th day of September 2024. I bring you this update. Academic doctors in the Southeast goes after a certain professor in the North who stated in his lecture that Igbo set out in the colonial era to dominate Nigeria. In his words, quote, the Igbo, in actual fact, from the 1950s, started sending their sons and daughters to Europe and America for higher education, all with the hope of eventual domination of the country, not necessarily for developing it for the benefit of the nation. End of quote. Now, this is what this professor, yes, they called him Professor Bako. Professor Bako made this statement in his lecture, yes, at Usman Danfodio University. Professor Ahmed Bako, yes, inaugural lecture. In his inaugural lecture at Usman Danfodio University, that's where he made this anti-Igbo narratives. Anti-Igbo narratives, yes. But the Forum of Southeast Academic Doctors, FOSAD, has expressed its dismay at the content of the 50th inaugural lecture titled The Igbo Factor in the History of Intergroup Relations and Commerce in Kano, Opportunities and Challenges Revisited, recently delivered by Professor Ahmed Bako at the Usman Danfodio University, Sokoto. According to this group, this Southeast group, Professor Bako misrepresented historical facts at various points in his lecture and also engaged in typical Igbo profiling, teasing a xenophobic position that negates the integrative spirit. Yes, as an academic advocacy group, in part, dedicated to understanding the diverse peoples of Nigeria and the broader tapestry of Nigerian history, the FOSAD says it had looked forward with great interest when Professor Bako's impending lecture was announced. The group said it had expected that as a professional historian, the professor would present the history of Igbos in Kano and their broader history in northern Nigeria with depth and dispassion. To be fair to Professor Bako, the group says, he met the expectation to a degree at various points in his presentation, citing credible scholarly sources. According to the group, Professor Bako correctly historicized the impetus behind Igbo immigration to other parts of colonial and post-colonial era. Now, FOSAD in a statement issued on Saturday, September 7, 2024, also says, the professor correctly portrayed the enterprising nature of the Igbos who left their homeland over 100 years ago to take advantage of opportunities presented in the colonial administration of Kano and other parts of the north. Despite this incontestable historiography, FOSAD says in the statement signed by the President, Dr. Stephen Wala, and Secretary General Dr. Ozo Ngoladi, that Professor Bako, for reasons it cannot fathom, advance some arguments that are not supported by historical evidence or contemporary fact. One of the controversial and historically dubious claims made by Professor Bako, according to FOSAD, in his statement that Igbo set out in the colonial era to dominate Nigeria. As the professor put it in his lecture, quote, the Igbo in actual fact from the 1950s started sending their sons and daughters to Europe and America for higher education, all with the hope of eventual domination of the country, not necessarily for developing it for the benefit of the nation. End of quote. Now, Foster says this is a provocative and historically inaccurate statement which calumniates the Igbos and misconstrues their legitimate attempt to compete in colonial and post-colonial Nigeria. The academic group disputes the claim that Igbos ever sought to dominate Nigeria, pointing out that Professor Bako never provided historical evidence to back up his controversial assertion. The group also says that Igbos are known to invest in and improve any locality where they are domiciled, sometimes even at the expense of their homeland. Now, FOSA disputes Professor Bako's statement that Igbo traders, with their supposedly aggressive trade practices and insular trade groups, displaced indigenous traders in Kano or anywhere else in the colonial and post-colonial North. The group recalls many collaborative ventures between Igbos and indigenous people of Kano and elsewhere in the North, and argues that the more than century-old sojourn of Igbos in northern Nigeria would not be possible with the alleged Igbo aggressiveness. Now, the group also points to the successful settlement of northerners in parts of Igbo land, which continues to this day, despite the terrorization of Igbo land by Islamic bandits and militant cattle herders from the north. Similarly, Fossa decries Professor Bako'S silence on events that led to the Nigerian Civil War, his selective account of the devastations and after effects of the war, and his rather rosy depiction of the post-war policy of indigenization, which shortchanged the Igbos, but in his recounting was depicted as entirely beneficial to them. Now, Professor Bako broached the issue of Igbo dispossession through the abandoned property saga, but nowhere in his historiography, according to Fossad, was there a mention of the grim prospects faced by Igbos who had to scratch up a new existence in post-war Nigeria with the 20 pounds given to them, whatever their pre-bank account balance. According to Fossad, the most vexatious part of Professor Bako's lecture in his suggestion that Igbos self-marginalize themselves in the Nigerian political arena by focusing almost exclusively on commercial and mercantile pursuits in the post-war period. This couldn't be further from the truth. Fossa says, as Igbos have fully participated in the politics of the country, despite the fact that there has yet to emerge 54 years after the Civil War, a Nigerian president of Igbo extraction. In this regard, Fossa says he strongly condemns Professor Bako's labeling of Ohanaeze Ndigbo, a socio-cultural organization seeking to promote Igbo unity and interest in Nigeria, as a secessionist outfit, although the professor disclaimed an interest in contemporary politics. He nonetheless made a pointed reference to current contestations on the question of power shift, as well as agitations for separation by Igbo political platforms such as the IPOB, the Ohanaeze Ndigbo Worldwide, and other Igbo separatist groups. Fossa says this is a gross mischaracterization of Ohanaeze's and, by extension, broader Igbo political outlook. The academic group says this is more worrying given that Professor Bako concluded by saying he hoped his lecture generates greater interest in the history of Igbo diaspora in different parts of the country, and that the lecture was delivered for the northern elites to know what actually happened so that necessary arrangements are made. Fossa says it wonders why an academic of Professor Bako's standing should be wondering whether Igbos would ever depart northern Nigeria, despite the integrative aspiration of the Nigerian Constitution, which as Section 41, Paragraph 1 provides that every citizen of Nigeria is entitled to move freely throughout Nigeria and to reside in any part thereof, and no citizen of Nigeria shall be expelled from Nigeria or refuse entry thereby or exit therefrom. This is the statement. I've stopped quoting the academic doctors now. Yes. So this is what they have said, talking about this man, Bako, who is talking about the Igbo dominating. So the Igbos are in the north since 100 years ago, and they have been dominating. Yes, the businesses, they have displaced Kano residents, the northerners, in their business locations. Yes, and they will displace them, displace northerners, displace Kano residents in their business. They displaced them. So they went to the north and they displaced northerners in their business and have taken over. He said he was set out early in the pre-colonial times to dominate Nigeria. That's why they sent their children to Europe and America to study, so that they come back to dominate, to take over. You have seen this in the history. You have seen what the Igbos are suffering. Yes, because they traveled to develop themselves, okay, so that they come back and improve the country. But the event of from 1967 to 66 to 70 show that, look, Ndigbo has been relegated. Since then, since 70 to this present day, and that has become the bane of their underdevelopment. Yes, that's why the country is in total shambles. It's a failed state because they fail to recognize the section of the people of the country that developed itself. They acquired knowledge. They acquired the technical know-how, yes, to govern, to lead in terms of science and technology, in terms of leadership, yes, and what have you. Politically and otherwise, the Igbos have been already, groomed, trained to lead the country to unenviable heights. But what are we saying since 1970 now? The relegation of this group. And yes, that's why they are where they are today. Oh yes, suffering, gnashing of their teeth. They are the least in the community of nations in Africa in terms of economic growth. Political stability. What is happening? Only from 1999 that they can talk about stability in politics. Since 1970 up until 1999, instability, incursions, military incursions. Yes. So that is what is happening. Yes. Said Ndibo said they are out to dominate others. And that is what he's saying. So that is what is happening now. He's calling on northern elites to do what? To come and chase Igbos away. So yes, he's calling on northern elites, said this lecture is for them to understand what is happening in the north. The northern elites. Oh yes,